Hi, I'm Helen Van Wyk and welcome to my studio. You can see I've already started to paint. I'm already started because I have so much to tell you today. I'm laying in an underpainting of acrylic. I use black and white, I have it on this palette, mix it up to make grays, and I'm putting in the first layer of paint. And this first layer satisfies my thoughts about the composition, the placement of the flowers, and the tone that they are in relation to their background, not paying too much attention to their actual shape, maybe their size. I do this in black and white acrylic, and I do this a lot. I do it to almost all my paintings because black and white acrylic, a layer of black and white acrylic will dry quickly. And so I'll be able to work on an absolutely dry underpainting. Now, this is an old way of painting. They did it years ago when they had not very much of their wonderful colors. They had so little and had to do so much. And so they realized that they could start their pictures in tempera, put all their values in tempera, and then put their precious colors on top. Well, acrylic is the 20th century's answer to the underpaintings that were done in tempera. Why do I do an underpainting? Because it's going to make, it's going to fortify my color. Even house painters use 2 coats of paint to get a better coverage, so why shouldn't an artist use 2 coats of paint? And I always say that an underpainting is like underwear, makes you look better in the end. And so, that's about the extent of the underpainting. Sometimes I make my underpaintings very exacting, and sometimes I leave them just very vague. Just a beginning. Now, if you were going to have to paint that bouquet of roses, wouldn't you rather start on my canvas than on a blank one? Because I've already put some thoughts down. I've decided where to place it, what tone they are in relation to the background, the size, and so the beginning of the coloration is not as frightening. So let me now step back and see what it looks like. I mean, it's very, very rough, but it doesn't have to be exact. Let me talk about this painting. It's an old Dutch rug. Actually, the Holland people don't use it as a rug. They put it on their tables, on their dining room tables. And this happens to be a very pretty one, and I do use it at home. Let's find out how I did it. I did it in layers. My first layer was an underpainting, much like the one you saw me do of the beginning of the roses picture. It satisfied all the lights and darks. No, it didn't have the pattern in it. It didn't have the texture in it. It was just the overall design and the placement of these vases. Now, the next layer was the introduction of the colors. And because I had so many colors, that's why I wanted to do it this way. I glazed, and I'll show you how I'll do that. I glazed in the red where it's red, I glazed in the yellow where it's yellow, and the blue, meaning I glazed all the pattern on, right over the gray. I let that dry. I worked on this, of course, and then on top of the pattern and the design, I started to add the texture, that lumpy look that made it look as though it's rug-like. And so you can see, I take it in stages, take it in layers. I feel as though my canvas is a support. My first layer is composition done just in grays. My next layer is introduction of color. The next layer is introduction of texture. and layer after layer until I've no more layers left, because I've reached a point that it's over. So now, we're back to my underpainting of the roses, and I have now taken my acrylic palette away, my acrylic, the water I use to thin it, and now this is dry, and I'm working in oil on top. There are people who say you can't do that. They said it very much 20 years ago when I was doing it. Now they're not saying it as much. Now they say maybe it's safe. But I plunged in using acrylic as an underpainting many years ago. And those paintings I did 20 years ago, I still have some of them in my studio, and they look just fine. So now let's glaze. Glaze is to take thinner, a painting medium, in this case linseed oil, and let's glaze a little bit of color on the white ones first. Remember, always do the more delicate colors first. And I'm going to make them slightly yellowish, so they're not pure white. No such thing as pure white. And now the next delicate color, the yellow ones. Ooh, that's bright. I don't know whether I want them as bright as that. Yellow ochre, that's better. You'll notice that all the flowers, whether they're white ones, red ones, or yellow ones, are all the same tone, because they're all being hit by the light. Oh, I want that redder. I used alizarin. I'm going to put some brighter red. And I might as well slosh that color out over the background, so I make sure I have good coverage. I have one bud, but I'm just going to make believe I see three. Poetic license. Why they call it poetic license, I don't know. It seems too fragile a definition for something that's such a practical solution. And green for some greenery. And something for backgroundery. Oh, I want this to be kind of rich and dark and moody. If any of you saw my Impressionist period lesson, you can see that why I want to go back to this, just for a standpoint of contrast. A glaze. Glazing means to apply color transparently. Well, the tone I'm working upon dictates the appearance of this mixture, which is burnt umber and alizarin crimson. So if you were right here with me and asked me, oh, what color are you using, Helen? I'd say burnt umber and alizarin crimson. And maybe a person might write that down. And I'd say, don't you dare write that down. And I say, well, why not? I said, because I don't know where you're going to use it. You have to, if you want to get this look, you have to use it on this tone of gray, because it is the gray underneath that is making it look the way it does. And now I've introduced some burnt sienna over on this side to, boy, I'm really making a mess of that rose over there. Well, look, you see how even glazing over it with burnt sienna, I haven't lost it completely because of the value that's underneath. In fact, I think it would be more practical to put this, why don't I use a cloth? Here I am scratching around, making all those funny shapes with, wow, isn't that better? Smooths it on nicer. Oh, better, better. Because you don't want the glaze to be, to impose too much of a brushstroke look. I want to save that for the next layer. The glazing is never a finished layer. It's a development layer. And I like the table to be a lighter tone. Let me put it in. Certain things that you want me to tell you, but then I have things that I want you to learn, and you must have a nice little cloth handy all the time. So now I've already used up 2 layers. The underpainting layer, which was tones of gray done in black and white acrylic, and now the glaze layer, which is the introduction of color. And to do the vase, I think I am going to do, I always do my vases and start them from a straight line, the line that I feel balances the bouquet, makes it look as though the bouquet won't tip one way or the other. And I've seen so many people do flower paintings and start with the vase. What's more important, the flowers or the vase? I think the flowers are more. Now that I've put that in, I feel as though I'd like it over here more. That's the fun of painting. You've got to just do it and see how it looks. Do it, see how it looks. Do it, judge it. Do it, judge it. So that's the glaze. Next I'm going to put on another layer of thought inspired by what I see over there. Before I show you my next layer of thought in a layer of paint, may I caution you about something. I'm sure you can notice that this bouquet that I'm working from is made of artificial flowers. Don't work from artificial flowers. I mean, they just are artificial, and then you paint them and they get more artificial looking. The effect that I want to show you is the effect that I got on this painting. Surely you can see these were real roses, old summer roses when they're big and lush. And I did this the same way I'm going to show you. I did an underpainting, then I glazed, and then I added the final effect, which you're going to see now. So notice how I kept these kind of in shadow. These, by the way, are from Nancy, my dear Nancy's garden. She's the one who gave me the spoon. I don't know whether you tuned in that day. And so let me show you now how I developed these roses with another layer. Now this is going to be opaque. First from acrylic underpainting, then to glazing, and now to thick paint. Thick paint to pick out the beautiful shapes of light. The beauty of starting with an underpainting and glazing is that all the darks are taken care of. You have it dark, find some lights, and you end up with light and dark. Of course, as you add these lights, you should have your mind a little bit on, or your thoughts on, the anatomy of a rose. But you see that does work. It works. It would work better if I had a real rose. Important thing for those who are interested in painting flowers. Always make the stem come from the flower perpendicular to its center. For instance, the center is in here and it's this way. So I'm going to go perpendicular to it to make sure that it sits on its stem right, even if I don't see the stem. I'll make sure that it does that. And since this one isn't touching anything else, I can do all the red ones. So tempting, and I've seen it happen with people who are painting flowers. Make sure that they all have slightly different colors and different positions. Eesh. The pressure that you exert on the brush. Start with a press and pull away, a press and pull away, press and pull away. Not at this stage, you don't keep the pressure the same throughout. It lifts and moves the petal, makes it feel as though it's going back or forth, to and fro. Let me make this one lurk in the distance a little. Oh, I don't like that color though. That's better. Before I would do these, I really would judge and say, is the background ready? Is it really ready? It's like putting makeup on. Is my foundation right for me to then add powder? See, we do a lot of things in layers. No, I don't like that background color. I want to add to it a little. Because these are going to be dark against the light part of the background. So why don't I really make that happen a little bit more? Don't want this picture to be that dark and dreary. I also like the fact that it looks as though they're flopping down. And that is the dynamics of the composition. So I like to let my brush strokes help that drama. Wow. Again, the tone I need is a light bright green. The shape I need has to be inspired by the knowledge that I want to make sure that these stems fall right. Now the white ones, even though I glazed color over them, which should have satisfied its general overall shape, in my haste, I didn't get it really the way I wanted it. So I do have to redo this one. So my underpainting in this particular situation only satisfied its position. But position is important, where it is. Don't ever put wonderful artistic efforts in a funny place. Composition, by the way, it's only you only notice it when it's wrong. You only notice the wrong of it. When composition is right, you never notice it. You look at everything else, all the other beautiful things about the painting, because the composition is taken for granted as being wonderful. But if the composition is wrong, the whole picture's ruined. So I don't like the way it's placed. So yeah, if it's too far down, and the roses could be beautifully painted, but they say I don't like it. It's too far down, or they're too big, or they're too small. So composition is unnoticed when it's wonderful, very much noticed if it isn't. So before I do this next white one, let me step back and see what's happened here. I'm going to now add the light that I see on this yellow rose. Another thing you should try to do to improve the dimensional effect of your paintings, make sure your roses or flowers overlap each other. If they overlap, they look as though this is in back of this one. If you don't overlap them, they all look as though they're on the same level or the same plane. Talking about composition, you know, I talked about composition just before. If I had more time, I would change this because they're equal, they're even. I would move this one down or move this one up, but not today. Now this one's going to overlap this one, so I'll put this one in first. From a standpoint of time, people often say to me, Helen, how much time does it take you to paint? Well, I said, well, it's taken me a lifetime. They say, oh, that's not the answer I want. I want to know, how long did it take you to paint this picture? And then instead of just getting a simple answer, they get a whole big long thing. I said, well, the underpainting usually takes me about, well, maybe 40 minutes. No longer than that, maybe just a half hour. Then the glazing doesn't take very long, but this stage, the stage I'm working on now, is the part that really can consume a whole afternoon. Another favorite question I hear is, do you paint every day? No, I don't paint every day. I'm not a plumber. I don't work 9 to 5. I organize my life so I get painting time in. If I'm going to have a dinner party, I don't paint that morning. I cook. But if I'm involved in a painting that I really am excited about, I don't invite anyone for dinner, because that would take me away from what I have my mind on. Organize your life so that you do have painting time. Because it does take a tremendous amount of concentration. As I added lighter tones to make the roses, make those blobs of color look like roses, I can add lighter tones too to make the greenery look like greenery. And maybe I'll just make this a transparent vase. Ooh, I see by the clock that I'm almost ready to say, but I did the flowers. That's what you were interested in seeing. I'm almost, time to make some soup. I'm Helen Van Wyk, and welcome to my studio. And as you all know, I don't worry. It's not the results that is so much fun about painting, it's the doing. When you finish a picture, the only thing you can do is start another one. While you're working on it, it's really such a joy. Although, people say, what's the difference between being a painter and being a portrait painter? I say the portrait painter has to be a little bit crazy. I know you want to know something. You have, maybe I should improve it. I paint what I know, but I need my eye to judge how it looks.